All right, how's everybody doing tonight? If someone could give me a quick shout out in the comments, let me know that you can hear me. That would be great. John will be delayed for a little while. I had got John all prepped and ready to go for this live stream, and then he got a interview with John Romita Jr. So at the let's see, the chance of everybody deserting the stream right now and going over to John's channel, he's talking to John Romita Jr. Sorry, John Romita Jr. And John Romita is doing a new book with Mark Millar. Anyways, so they're talking about that over in his channel right now. I told him stay on your channel and as long as you want, because if I had a chance to talk to John Romita Jr., I'd talk his ear off. Anyways, that being said, we're going to have a little bit of a makeshift discussion here, or just review of comics, because I lean on John a lot. Trust me, he likes to talk, and I like to let him talk. So we'll see who's here of the regulars. Cushion, how you doing? You're becoming a regular. Vaz is here. Pedro is here. George is here. Southern Sky, I don't know if I've seen you here before, but that could be my bad memory. Mystical is here, and let's see who else we got. Leonidas is here. Glad to see everybody. So if you're new here, and we might have some new people, but if you're new here, what I usually do is just talk for a little while, or John and I talk about comics, and we usually just pick a year and talk about good comics of that year. That's probably what we'll do tonight, because I don't have a specific topic. But if you want to ask me any questions about any of my books that I have out, or that I'm going to be coming out with, my 4 books so far that are on tap, we have Valiant Heroes and Thomas Valiant, both of which are out. And we have Crom the Destroyer, which is still being worked on. And I profusely apologize for everyone for the immense lateness of that book. And we have Fade to Blue, which is almost ready to go, and Artemis, which is being worked on as we speak as well. So that being said, as I mentioned, we might have some new people here, because apparently the last couple of videos I've done over the last month or so are just blowing up. I don't know what it is. I'm going to have to try to catch lightning in a bottle. But as I said, usually my normal good video does about 8,000, and the one I did about progressives hating Christianity is now up to about 45,000, whereas the one I did about the World War II myth from 2 weeks ago is hit 75,000. So that's driven my subscriber count up past the 25,000 mark, which is a bonus for me, to say the least. It's a milestone. I was stuck at 24,000 for so long, and now we have about 26,000, which is great. To have my channel actually expanding after 7 years, that's beautiful. Anyways, we're looking at Cardinal in the background. I left Cardinal up from the last stream because yeah, that's a beautiful picture. And well, yes, as I was saying, anybody who has any comments about any of my books, or anything I say during my other Saturday videos, or anything about today, just tag me in the comments or put a question mark on it, and we will get to all of the questions before the end of the night, assuming John actually shows up. But again, I am not going to rush him at all if he is talking to John Romita. So let's go. I know that a lot of people, I don't want to say this, I would not like to say a bad word about John Romita Jr., because I know a lot of people don't really find his stuff very appealing. And I'll have to say, I think that come about mid-90s, he changed his style to something which was not as beautiful as I had grown up with. Let's put it that way. But I thought that his stuff in the X-Men was just the most beautiful thing ever. Honestly, he had a capacity that his father had, of putting in characters that had an edge to them, while at the same time being able to make it look realistic, but in his own style. And I honestly think that, the Red Sonja saga, that jumped off of that original 2-in-1 of Red Sonja and Spider-Man, where he took the amulet of, who was it? I can't remember the name of the sorcerer, and he threw it in the harbor, and then it resurfaced in the X-Men and turned all of New York City into basically a Hyborian age for a little while. That was John Romita Jr., and that was beautiful. That was perfect. I don't even know what year that is. I should actually look up what year that is. If I had the time and John to talk to and distract you for a little bit, I would do that, but I don't right now. So we'll just put up Mike's Amazing World in the background and I will get to some questions here. I love Mike's Amazing World to show everybody good comics from the past that, again, good comics that people should be reading if you have not read them before. Anyways, let's take a look. Oh, wait a minute. I'll make this a little bigger. Full screen. There we go. And I'll get to your questions here because there are a couple of questions already. Scrolling down to the questions. Southern Sky said, the video is popular because you noticed the what? I'm not entirely sure what that emoji is. I'm not entirely sure what that emoji is, Southern Sky. So apologies. Leonidas says, hey, RJ, I'm kind of new in all this. So where exactly can I buy your books? Can I buy them in Amazon? No, at present, you can only buy them on Indiegogo. So the link is in the description for the Indiegogo for the Valiant Heroes. So on the Valiant Hero page, you can buy both the Valiant Heroes. You can either buy it as a single 80 plus page graphic novel or as 3 floppies. The 3 floppies are basically have their own stories. There's a Kit Fox story, there's a Thor story, and there is a Valiant Heroes story, which is basically Pulse and Pharaoh. So there's that. Oh, there's also, yes, I guess I should mention this as well. So you get different things with each of those tiers. If you're wondering what's the difference, there's not a whole lot of difference. If you buy the graphic novel, you get a separate a backup story, which is 8 pages, wordless 8-page backup story to introduce Artemis, which is one of the characters of the book, the manga book that I'm working on right now. If you buy them as floppies, you get a bunch of extra things in the background. You don't get the 8-page backup story, but you get a bunch of maps and things like that, which you won't get in the graphic novel. That's not to say you have to buy both of them because they both have the same main stories. But yes, you can buy the Valiant Heroes. If you buy that, then you can buy the Thomas Valiant original graphic novel as well. But that being said, we have still a lot of Thomas Valiant left, but I don't have a lot of the Valiant Heroes graphic novels left. I got a lot of the floppies left. Now there's a story behind that, which I probably told before, but yeah, some guy paid for 500 copies of Thomas Valiant, and he paid for them. And then I went to send them to him and he wasn't there. Like literally he wasn't there. Could not get a hold of him again. I tried, could not get a hold of him. So I have these 500, no, not 550, a lot of copies of Thomas Valiant. Anyways, that being said, the floppies are still good. So yeah, go to the Indiegogo. Link is in the description for those books. Crown the Destroyer has been shut down. Not on my asking. So not on my watch. It is Stripe, not even Indiegogo. It wasn't Indiegogo that shut it down. It was Stripe that shut it down for some reason because they didn't like how I answered their survey or something like that. Anyways, Stripe is a payment processor, by the way. Anyways, scrolling down. Southern Sky says, I'm still very new to your channel and still figuring out what you're about. What I'm about is, well, my channel is based upon the idea of a traditional hero. I deconstruct the deconstruction of the last 20 years plus, because what they've been doing is tearing down the traditional idea of a hero, and so I show why they're full of it. Basically, that's what I do mainly, and from that I get into pop culture. I get into scientific reasoning behind why graphic novels and let's just say sequential art, it affects people the way that they do. I get into movies, I get into philosophy, I get into a whole bunch of stuff. So let's go down, scrolling down. Like I usually tell everybody when they ask, finally, they say, how do you make your videos? I just turn on my computer, turn on the microphone and talk. That's all I do. It's stream of consciousness. So anyway, Manny is here. How you doing, Manny? He's saying hello to the chat. Let's see. George says, to me, his art, take it you're referring to John Romita Jr., is so, but it's still leaps and bounds ahead. Yeah, leaps ahead of most artists in the big two today. Indeed, indeed. Scrolling down. Southern Sky says Red Sonja was an interesting story alongside Conan. I did so that Marvel 2-in-1, which was where Red Sonja supposedly she basically the spirit of Red Sonja takes over Mary Jane. Anyways, Red Sonja and Spider-Man. I actually did a review of that early on in my channel, which was a let's just say poking fun at Richard over at Comics Matter. Yeah. This some beautiful stuff in the background, by the way. We are looking at. Let me just put this, make this a little bigger. So we got all the 2000 ones in the top, and then 2010 Action Comics, Legion, Alien Legion. But let's look at. I'll bring this and the Archie comics there, but you got some Alpha Flight. That's Big Bertha, by the way. I think it's no, it's Pink Pearl. It's not Big Bertha. It's Pink Pearl. Marvel like to come up with, well, let's just say fat chick superheroes, no, supervillains. One of them was a superhero. Anyways, I don't see any John Romita right off the top for January 1985, but he might be in here. Let's just take a quick look. There's the Badger from from Mike Barron, right. So what else we got? We've got some good stuff. I think no, I don't think that's Mike Zeck that does the cover for these Captain America. Who does the covers? Editor, really? Let's see. Penciler, writer, colorist, inker. Well, it says Paul Neary is the penciler, but it does. Oh, yeah, Paul Neary does the cover as well. So unfortunately, I can't make those covers any bigger. I like to go. Oh, I love this Conan right here. Anyways, I'll go back to the chat for a minute. I just want to put those up and get you a little more to look at than I had before. Scrolling down, answer some questions here before we go on. Vaz says, last weekend, I decided to read the last batch of Superman from the Bendis run. John Romita Jr.'s art was okay. The story was not, and glad I stopped back when I did. Yeah, that's what I mean. I agree. There is something lacking in John's art right now as compared to his heyday in the 1980s. That being said, he has said in other interviews, I don't know if it was an interview with John or not, but I can't remember whose interview it was with. No, I think it was what's his name? The guy who created Bane with Chuck Dixon. What's his name? I can't remember. I never remember his name off the top of my head. I've had him on my channel. Anyways, he said in an interview with him that what he tried to do in the later years was to take the advice of his father, John Romita Sr., saying, become a better storyteller. And so I think, as he explained it, if I remember correctly, stopped being as deliberate in how much he put down on the page as his pencils, and decided to focus more on storytelling and how the panels are set up and all that kind of stuff. So that being said, again, yeah, I agree, Vaz. Leonidas also says, hey, RJ, you saw the new Marvel. No, I haven't seen the Marvel fighting game. Marvel versus Capcom game. Do you like them? No, I really, honestly, I didn't play a whole lot of those kinds of games, fighting games at all. And no, I don't really have any real intention to play those games. I always play strategy games. I never liked, basically, I always play D&D games or D&D like games, especially ones where you were able to pause and strategize. So the early D&D games were turn-based, and then when you got into things like Icewind Dale and Baldur's Gate 2, all those kinds of things, you could actually pause and do it as if it was strategy based. So those are the kind of games I like. I don't like these very fast fighting games. I never have. Scrolling down. Southern Sky, I see. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. Oh, George says, what if Volume 2, Number 16 had a good story of Conan, Red Sonja, and Wolverine? Volume 2? I don't remember that one. My brother was just buying some back issues of What If. He bought the Thor versus Conan one within a batch of dollar comics, honestly. Let's see. Scrolling down. Jose says World War III myth video. Wow. Some problems then are now. Media needs to be controlled by Christians for the greater good. Well, it was World War II, but still. Yeah, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about that this week. I'm not entirely sure. Again, I never finalize what I'm going to be talking about in my videos until probably the night of or the day of. But yeah, there needs to be civility brought back into media. Let's just put it that way. To actually, and when I mean civility, at the bare minimum, I mean give the people who are your consumers what they actually want. So here's the thing: 9 out of 10 Americans. We're even talking America. 9 out of 10 Americans believe in God, and I'm not sure what the percentage of those are Christian, but I assume that it is the majority are Christian. But yeah, 9 out of 10 people in America still believe in God. So this progressive narrative is, all over the place. Oh, John has just popped up on my screen. Hello, John. How you doing?
I hope
no worry. I'm talking to John Romita, and I was watching, and it's like, yeah, you go ahead and talk all you want. If I had John Romita Jr. on my channel, I would. I'm sorry, I might kick you off, John.
I don't play. I kicked off Marcus and Yang, so because he was late. He got messed up on the time. He's in Austin, so he messed up on the time.
What's he doing in Boston?
Austin, Texas. That's right.
Oh, it's Austin. Okay. All right. My apologies. I thought he was my old stopping grounds, but anyway, we were just looking through some covers from 1985 and talking about John Romita and a couple of things. We got as I was saying earlier, I got a lot of new people, and my subscriber count has jumped up a couple of thousand because of those videos. My World War II video has gone up to like 75,000 people watched it so far. So,
come on over to his sidekick, John's Longbox. I can use it.
Tony is here in the chat as well. And Southern Sky says, great take, by the way, on the recycling of heroes and stories as we move through time. Yeah, that's because these quote unquote progressive people can't write anything new. That they don't want to write anything new because they want to take existing characters and use them for their own ends. And that's one of the things John and I talk about a lot.
RJ, I don't know if I think we might have talked about this in private, but one of the things you really made me think about, I watch all your Saturday videos, and I watch it when I'm in the car and I'm driving and I have no distractions because you're smarter than me and I really need to concentrate. And then I crash into trees, but that's beside But when you were talking about what are you progressing towards? You're progressing towards utopia. What is utopia? Nothing. So you're never going to achieve your goal. You're constantly going to be. It reminded me of that quote from C.S. Lewis about the benevolent dictator that will never stop oppressing you. Because the morals, righteousness, they will never leave you alone. The moral busybody, and I think that you're 100% right. Sometimes I disagree with you, but even when we disagree, I appreciate your points. But I actually use this as an argument with somebody at work. I'm like, what are you progressing towards? And they literally said utopia. And I said, well, what does utopia mean? And they're like, I said, it literally means no place. Like you can never achieve your goal. So we shouldn't try. I said, no, you should set a realistic goal. You're going to run a race that you can't win, But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up.
I was actually thinking about a similar topic today, John. I was cutting my grass and I was thinking to myself about the fact that why do these people do what they do? And it's because, well, basically, they don't have the capacity to deal with their own problems. But there's this thing in the mind, the way that the brain works is that if you deal with a problem, you get like a flood of dopamine. But if you think about how you're going to deal with the problem and you come up with a scenario in your head where you play out that you actually solve the problem, you get the exact same hit of dopamine. So these people they have no capacity to solve their own problems. So what they do is they come up with a scenario in their head to blame somebody else for their problems. That's exactly what it is. And then it makes them feel good.
Well, of course, because you show me a problem 9 times out of 10, the person is the problem, myself included. When I was a miserable person, I was making myself miserable. But it's nobody wants to be blamed for their problems. You don't want to be like, I'm being oppressed. No, you're making bad decisions. No, that guy is oppressing me. And to me, that's the root of progressivism. Is it's not my fault, it's that guy's fault, and that's it. Once you understand that, everything else kind of makes sense.
Yep. George is saying here, we were talking about Red Sonja earlier because we were talking about John Romita. But he says here's the new Red Sonja is bad just because it doesn't have a distributor, which is weird since she actually got to wear the scale male bikini. I haven't heard much about the actual movie. I've only seen stills from the movie, George. So I don't know a whole lot about the movie that's coming out, if it is coming out even. Southern Sky says, what do you think of Frank Miller's new artwork for his comics? I know he's old, so I'm not being critical of him per se, but it's a lot different from his earlier work. Yeah, Southern Sky, I know you're new. I did do a whole video about it probably 2 years ago when he was doing the Fantastic Four covers and a couple of covers for Marvel. Basically saying that he's working off of his own, what do you call it? His own medium, his own way of doing things. It's very much like Walter Simonson. Frank Miller is based upon geometrical shapes, and it has progressed into such a way that it's almost nothing but geometrical shapes now, and it looks really weird. Now, if you're someone who has followed Frank Miller for a long time, you would see the progression of his art and be able to understand it. But the problem is people don't know Frank Miller anymore. The regular comic buyers just don't know Frank Miller anymore, and it just looks bizarre. And to me, again, I would say Frank Miller was never at the top tier of my artists that I loved, but it does look bizarre to me as well.
I mean, for me, Frank Miller's art, I always liked his art. I always, his early art was rough, but I always liked it. But to me, it was like the whole package. Like it was his storytelling, it was the emotions, it was the impact, everything all rolled into one. Just was so like I read Born Again. We were just talking about what the Daredevil. Why can't I think of the name of the other Daredevil stories? But his Elektra stories, his couple of times at bat with Spider-Man, they are just so good. But like as far as art wise, like to just look at a panel, there's so many other artists that I just think are better artists, and I feel bad saying that about Frank's, given how much I love him. But I think Frank it's like in totality of just as a comic book, that to me is what I like about Frank.
The thing here, an interesting thing is when I posted on my Twitter a couple of days ago, I was probably last week. It was a Superman cover, and somebody messaged to me saying, "Is that Frank Miller?" And I said, "No, it's Klaus Janson." The thing is, Klaus Janson made a lot of Frank Miller's work, and here the unfortunate thing is Klaus Janson still works as a consultant for Marvel, basically telling them how to do the progressive garbage that they're putting out there. But still, I think half of Frank Miller's work is just Klaus Janson. You take Klaus Janson out of that, and it becomes almost unrecognizable to some people.
Yeah, there's some Frank Miller work without Klaus Janson. I'm trying to think of there was an issue or two with another inker. It's funny. I was going to ask this about John Romita Jr., but I feel like John Romita Jr., the inker really changes his art a lot.
Yeah.
Same with Frank Miller. Sometimes there's some, and I didn't want to get negative, but there's some inkers that I just think just ruined JR's art. And same with Frank, but not with Klaus Janson. Klaus Janson, they were like the Lennon and McCartney, where they worked together that they could almost do no wrong. And I do think like he's old, and I think he had like alcohol problems. So yeah, Frank Miller's art now isn't as good, but am I going to be able to run electrical pipe when I'm in my 70s and 80s? No. So just remember what you could do back in your prime.
Godzilla says, "Love your content. Always dreamed of writing a comic that inspires people like comics when I was a kid, born in 93. Still worthwhile. If you want to do it yourself, go ahead and do it. More people making their own comics, the better. I always say, because rising tide, what is it?
Rising tide floats all boats. Yep.
Floats all boats. So, the better everybody does, the more competition we have, which is the exact opposite of what you get with the big two and all the even smaller indies now. The more competition we have, the better.
Yeah. I like that there's a lot of people on indie crowdfunding. I like that Keanu Reeves went to what did he go to Kickstarter and did that berserker without the vowels. Because now I can tell people, yeah, Keanu Reeves does the same thing I do. It's not that weird. You know, it's mainstream now. Hollywood actors are doing crowdfunders too. You know, now Mark Miller and John Romita Jr. are doing a crowdfund. You know, these are guys who work for Hollywood, you know. They swapped out the blood for sweat. Yeah, they toned it down.
Alessandro also is here and he says, RJ, the progressive cult considers racism as the capital sin while pride is the greatest virtue. Yeah, whereas pride should be the greatest vice, the greatest, it's the mother of all sin. I was just thinking on that today, Alessandro.
RJ, is that your opinion? Is there like a hierarchy of sins?
Yes. Well, yes and no. In the fact that if I remember correctly, it's not that there's a hierarchy, like there's a 7 deadly sins.
Right.
But of those 7, the only one that's actually given the hierarchy is pride. You actually can't sin any of the other sins without committing first the sin of pride. So it is called the mother of all sins.
Oh, okay. So what would be the mother of all virtues?
Mother of all virtues? The virtues are talked about in a different way, and it's usually talked about in the fact that prudence is the first, it's the charioteer that controls all the rest, whereas the strongest, however, is justice, which would be the lead horse of the chariot.
Okay. There you go. And we got to do a team-up comic with like 7 superheroes or the avatars of the virtues and 7 deadly sins avatar, and there you go.
Baz says, I saw a YouTuber yesterday about what current comics feel different than in the past. The big chance was back then artists and scriptwriters worked together to create the story. Well, yes and no. I think that's something to do with it, but at the same time, as I was saying earlier, I think it's just give the people what they want. That's the biggest thing. And that being said, Faz, you're absolutely right in the fact that I have covered over the last, 6-7 years, so many of those Marvel podcasts where they just hire people because they have some kind of identity marker, like literally, as I always used to say. I heard Son Amanat interviewing a 16-year-old girl who was a Native American environmental activist who said, I want to possibly write something one day. And she tried to hire her as a writer for Marvel Comics. Oh, the Don is here, raiding over from John's. I'm a little behind on my chat here.
I just have to, the whole concept of representation is defeated by Japan. Japan defeats representation because one issue of a Japanese comic or manga outsells the entire American comic book industry. And for the most part, the Japanese, they don't draw Japanese characters. They almost draw like Western, blonde-haired, blue-eyed characters. The Japanese don't need to see themselves in their art. And it's the biggest selling thing in the world. Like, I just like you need to see yourself. That is such a flaw. To me, that is like, it's not even narcissism. It's like you are missing something in your soul that you're trying to fill. Like a healthy person doesn't need to see themselves in art. I want to look at art because I don't want to see myself. I want to see nature. I want to see other people. But I don't know. This whole concept of we got to be represented. It's absolutely ridiculous.
RJ, I was just talking to John last week about what I'm reading. If you're talking about books, I'm still reading The Maltese Falcon. I'm slowly making my way through it before I move on to The Big Sleep and other stuff like that, because I'm very much into the film noir right now, while I'm doing Fade to Blue. So if you're looking for my recommendations, I would go with Dashiell Hammett. Let's see, scrolling down, see if I can get a little farther into the chat, if there's any more comments for me. Oh, yes. John, I don't know if I put your book in the chat or in the description of the video. I think it did. But here's John's book, which is Heroic Tales #2, which is up on Fund My Comic right now. Do you have an end date for that, John?
The campaign ends July. It ends on July 26th. And then I'm going to launch on Kickstarter. I don't want the Kickstarter to compete with Fund My Comic. The Kickstarter, when it's over, it's done, it's over. But the Fund My Comic, I'll leave open as a store. Not that I'm saying you have plenty of time, because I would appreciate it if you backed early, because I'm already paying for other artists. Yeah, I got like 4 or 5 comics in production right now, so every bit helps.
I know the
This
feeling,
comic
John.
is already paid for. You know what I mean? This comic is coming out; it's already paid for. What we're doing now is using the money that I get now to pay for other comics.
Omnipo B. Omnipo B. Asked, is Thomas Valiant more like Mr. Fantastic or Plastic Man? I would say he's more like Plastic Man, although he is based more in his attitude on Mr. Fantastic. I usually take two characters. In case you don't know, I say this all the time, but I usually take two characters. I base my world on basically on amalgam. I take a character from DC usually and a character from Marvel, and I smush them together, and I make a separate character, and which again, it's not Plastic Man. It's Mr. Fantastic that I use for Marvel, but his powers do work more like Plastic Man in the fact that they're not just stretch powers, because he can also control his density, which means he can become extremely, like he can make his hands extremely hard as a rock, so that he turns them into, maces and things like that. So, or he can make his entire body stone. But I am going to actually, if I ever get around to it, explore the origins of Thomas Valiant. That's one of the books that I have half planned in my head, and I'm just looking for the right artist to do it.
Could Thomas Valiant, could he put like a hole in his chest?
Oh yeah, because that's what happens in Thomas Valiant Thomas Valiant #1, right?
Yeah.
He's literally, it's when I was putting the character together, I thought of him as a human gelatinous cube, as
Okay.
in a human that had been turned into a gelatinous cube. You always get you were talking about manga. You always get the manga stories of a human that gets turned into a slime. I was thinking, no, I get a human that turned into a gelatinous cube. That's more. It's because the slime is great and all, but gelatinous cube to me is much more dangerous. They're always usually acidic, and just death follows wherever they go, right?
Yeah. So he must have like different internal organs. Like Reed Richards, he can't just open up his chest and let like a punch go through the middle of his chest, because he stretches his lungs. He can move his lungs around, but he can't just open up a hole. So like Plastic Man is literally made out of plastic.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have lungs and guts, which always bothered me that he had children, because he doesn't have any of those organs. He's made out of plastic.
Zach Dan says Thomas Valiant is clever and has great control over his powers, but he's not a super genius level as far as I know. No, taking on Thor, not a super genius level thing to do at all. If people are yelling at him, stop. But so if a little bit of a spoiler for people if you haven't read the book yet, but it's a good scene, so it's not too much of a spoiler. But yeah, he wants to be a hero. That's one of the problems. I don't think I'm giving away too much here. It's something that I haven't really covered in any of my other books. I will at some point, but that's part of Thomas Valiant's problem, and part of what I'm going to tie into when I do his origin is the fact that he has a real problem in the fact that no, he doesn't have any internal organs, John. He's basically made up of a substance which snaps back to its original state whenever he tries to transform back into human. And that is so much the case that he has extreme problems actually developing and even keeping thoughts in his head that are, continuous, just because of the fact that if you're snapping back to the original state, it's an original state of your brain, everything. Right.
Oh,
so
that's interesting. Okay. So if Thomas Valiant is at rest, say he's at dinner with his family or whatever, and he's not superhero, he doesn't have any powers. He's just like a normal human, and then
no, but in the fact that no, I wouldn't say he doesn't have any powers. I would say he stopped being human a long time ago. He was human at one point.
Okay. So he's like an amoeba in human form.
He's a gelatinous cube in human form. Okay. Is what it is, really.
Okay, cool. All right, that's real interesting. And like I like that. So now he's having problems to like progressing,
That's one of the limitations. I always put limitations. John and I talked about this many times. I always put limitations on my characters. One of the most powerful character I have is Disc, but her limitations is the fact that she's just a woman. She can control so many discs of teleportation that it becomes insane at some point. But if she gets hit in the head, then she's done for, right?
Right. She's just a woman. She gets confused if she's out of the kitchen.
Although she is, if anybody bought the cards for the original Thomas Valiant, you'll know that Disc is also a mercenary. So that's why I think her and Pulse got together and worked so well, because Pulse is an ex-soldier. They just call him the soldier a lot of the times because he worked with Thomas Valiant. Again, that's one of the things. If you go to the Valiant Heroes, you learn that Disc has been alive for a while and was actually in World War II, whereas he also served with Thomas Valiant in the Korean War. So,
okay. Do superheroes age in your world?
yes and no. That's the thing. Some of them do, some of them don't. I mean, if you're someone like Pulse, who's able to basically regenerate to some extent, you have a natural out. Thomas Valiant, the same, is the fact that he's no longer human, and that's why he struggles to be human. So aging is not really part of the process. But then he has people on his team like Kit Fox and things like that. They're just normal humans. They're on like the fourth Kit Fox already, because they have to hand down the mantle one to another. And even Blue Skies is basically my not very friendly Superman, faux Superman, I guess. Yeah, he replaced his father, who replaced his father. So, it's not to say the more powerful you are, the more age doesn't touch you. It's that some people do and some people don't.
Okay. All right. John,
But I always actually tag that exact thing, John, before I finish putting a character in my head to use.
Yeah, you have some clever weaknesses. RJ and I have talked in private, so I don't want to spoil any of his stuff. But we both like to have cool weaknesses, and I got a character. I already mentioned him a few times. Like Captain Atlas is by far the most powerful super being in my world. We probably give Superman a run for his money, although in my mind Superman beats anybody. But he's got such a good. He's got a bad weakness, but it's a good weakness as far as character development. I can't wait to introduce this character. And Old Dirty Fatty wants to know, do I make any characters whose weakness is being Canadian? Do we have to make that character? Everybody in Canada's weakness is that they're Canadian. So,
I think that you have some beautiful and unique ways of creating heroes, John. The hero, I don't know if he's in Thomas, or sorry, um, your second edition or not, but the one that you said where he can see the future and it has to do with the parasite and all that kind of stuff.
Don't spoil it.
Don't spoil it. But that character, John was describing,
because Mark Miller and John Jr. have a psychic Sam about a private eye who can see the future. Yeah, so he's being drawn right now. He's debuting in a story called The Sleeper Agent. So this character's name is Augie Carmichael, and he's a big fat guy, and he keeps saying, "Trust my gut, trust my gut," but don't spoil why he got to trust his gut. But now I'm starting to wonder if people are going to tell me, "Oh man, you copying Mark Miller." This character's been in my role-playing game for 20 years, and Luke Stone is already drawing him before I knew about Psychic Sam. Yeah,
Ryan asks, no, I love that character, John.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. And when
Ryan
people
asks, how do...
Oh, I'm sorry.
How does a hero decide when to let someone die because it is too risky to save them? Should heroes risk dying to save the person when they could save many more people in a less risky situation? Yeah, I don't like the whole trolley. What do you call it? What is it? It's situational ethics.
Yeah.
Right. Situational ethics is a part of postmodernism. I never even answer postmodern questions or situational ethics. Is the fact that to me, a hero would save the person that is right in front of them. It's not, you don't make that distinction. It's save as many as you can. And the whole point of cartoony superheroes is that they get away with it, right? Let's see.
Right. I mean, if a superhero is going to stop and think, oh, if I save this guy, I can. Now it should be in the moment. Like you don't think that's what makes Superman super. Is he intrinsically knows what's the right thing to do. Like I could see Batman being a little bit more calculating, but like, can we all agree Superman is the greater superhero? I mean, the powers and but Superman is like to me more good.
Okay, let me answer the question in a different way, John, because you just reminded me of something. You're
Okay.
absolutely right, though. You're absolutely right, because I always go back to the virtues, right? Saying a hero is a paragon of virtue. The first virtue is prudence. Prudence is correct decision making, which is to say that you naturally are inclined to do things that are going to work out for you, right? And it becomes almost it is a habit, so you become that habit. And the here was the story that really struck me when I was reading about this virtue. It was a story about Mother Teresa. She walked into a war zone at one point, and there was these two factions fighting over a bridge. I think it was Mother Teresa, and she blessed all the people on one side, and then she told the soldiers on that side, "I'm going over to the other side tomorrow." And they said, "No, you can't do that. You're going to die." I mean, we're literally fighting. There's gunfire on this bridge. We're fighting over this bridge. And she said, "No, there's going to be a ceasefire tomorrow when I walk across." And they said, "No, no, you're going to die. You can't do that." And next day, she walked out, and everybody stopped. Like literally, everybody stopped. Let her walk across the bridge. She got to the other side. She blessed everybody on the other side. She walked back. It's like that was the example of prudence. It's like it's almost a that's why I think of it as a low level superhero power. It's the fact that things work out for you, almost like in a Scarlet Witch hex way, but in the opposite.
Oh,
I guess
yeah,
we would say a long shot way, right?
yeah, yeah. As long as you have the good intentions. I love Longshot. That's such an interesting character. Greta Thunberg now going to Palestine. Nothing's gonna happen to her.
Alessandro says, RJ, John, would I would like to recommend some Golden Age comics that I liked. Space Hawk.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, Space Hawk is anything by Basil Wolverton. Talk about crazy psychedelic fun art. Oh my, there's nobody like him.
I don't know who Flip Falcon is.
Yeah,
Honestly.
I don't know Flip Falcon.
Flip Falcon of the Fourth Dimension. Captain 3D. Oh, I know Captain 3D.
I don't know Captain 3D.
They did bring him into, I think they brought, if I'm thinking of the correct one, there is a Captain 3D that they brought into Marvel for like 3 issues, and that was it. And then he died out.
Yeah,
He was
they
supposed
brought
to be.
Yeah, what if the Avengers formed in the 50s?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where I'm remembering from as well. George says he's reading Defenders, 142.
Yep. Oh, you towards the end, yeah.
Let's see. Let's scroll down a little bit if I can get to the chat because. Oh, Southern Sky says, was the Phantom a good comic? It really depends, Southern Sky. There have been so many versions of the Phantom because that's one of the things about the Phantom is that he becomes he is a legacy character. He has been a legacy character for a long time. So different Phantoms are different people. There's even been female Phantoms, and you get an entirely different team working on them. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Right now, I think they really love the Phantom in, I don't know, it's like Denmark or Sweden or something like that. And they have books coming out now that are only in Swedish or Danish, whatever they are. So yeah, you get a lot of
comic books. He was in the pulps. He's an old character.
Let's see. Leonidas says, hey, RJ and John, do you play video games? And if so, for you, what would be the best way to make a comic book superhero game? I don't know about that. I think that Chuck Dixon and his partner, what's his name? Graham Nolan are trying to do that right now, Leonidas, with their spinner rack. There's some version of that anyways, but I would not know how to do that, quite honestly.
I don't play video games. If I did, I would get divorced, I would be fired, and I wouldn't make comics. Because video games look so cool that I wouldn't do anything else. I know I have an addictive personality, so I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't gamble, and I won't play video games because I know I will not stop. I just eat potato chips.
Pedro says, RJ, the companies don't change their ways for Pride Month. You think they notice that people with air colors don't buy their stuff? Yeah, I was honestly, Pedro, I think I might, but I'm not entirely sure. Do an entire video about that on Saturday, is the fact that this is all crashing down around their ears right now. And I think this is the turning point, but they're not going to turn unless they're forced to. But yeah, no, they're still trying to push this, even though they know it's crashing and burning.
Let's be realistic. If AOC becomes president in 4 years, it's going to be back. The businesses are opportunists. Right now, the needle is pointing over here. If the needle goes back, they'll bring it back. Whatever they think is going to make them more money.
Mystic, you have a good question here, but it would probably take several hours to answer that question. What's the reason why manga characters largely appear Caucasian? It was something I've long been curious about. Here's the thing about the vast majority of manga in black and white. So they don't actually appear Caucasian in skin tone wise. That being said, the reason why most manga faces are actually in a, we'll say, not really a diamond shaped, more of a triangular shaped with a pointy chin and all that, is because Asian faces actually go that way because they have high cheekbones, which are much more prominent than Caucasians. So, and also the reason for the large eyes is the fact that for Europeans, what they look at in order to determine where the European eye naturally goes in order to determine whether or not a person is being truthful is to watch their mouth as they speak. Whereas for Asians, for some reason, they look at the eyes. And that's why they make the eyes really large. So there's a lot of cultural reasons and actual physical reasons why their characters look like they do. And I agree. To me, they look Caucasian, but to Eastern people, they look Eastern.
Okay, I didn't know that. All right.
That being said, if you go to the other part of it, which is the hair color, when you do have color, the only reason why they do that is they put different hair color on them and don't have them all, because your Easterns are going to have all the same hair color. But the reason why they did that originally was because when you have a manga artist, they work so incredibly fast that they simply use the same face profile for every one of their characters and then give them different hair. But it's a really good question, Mystic. Let's see. Southern Sky says, Fourth Age, what would classify Dick Tracy? What do I classify Dick Tracy as? Dick Tracy would be more a pulp hero, wouldn't you say, John?
Yeah. Dick Tracy, like a mystery man, or police. Of course, there was that 50s cartoon or 70s cartoon when they had the flying trash cans and everything. But the original Dick Tracy was like a cop hero, right?
They did have an actual name for it, Southern Sky. I can't remember it off the top of my head, quite honestly, because when superheroes came along, they were given a name that was different from the original pulp heroes, and literally I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but they were given a classification. I apologize for not being able to remember it, though. Let's see. Tony is asking, what are your thoughts on the Red Sonja Dynamite issues?
I don't have any. I have the new Conan stuff, and I didn't read it yet because I'm missing issue number 1. So as soon as I pick up number 1, I'll read it. But I've been purposely not buying a lot of comics lately because I got hit with property taxes. So
for me, I didn't come in until the end of the run, and by that time, Gail Simone was writing most of the stuff, and to me, it had a nick factor with it because Gail Simone was writing it. But at the same time, I did get the last free comic book day stuff that came out with Red Sonja, and it was awful. I mean, that free comic book day first issue, which also they had the first issue of the Conan that's coming out now out with free comic book day too. That was spectacular. But the Red Sonja was just, I wanted to throw it. I think I threw it in the trash, quite honestly.
Isn't it funny that you go to free comic book day and you're just like, I don't even know if I want any of this. Free comics, and I don't even want them.
Tom RJ says Thomas Valiant's powers would be popular with the ladies. I suppose so.
There's a reason why they called him Mr. Fantastic. Plastic is made completely of plastic. They confirmed that in the Grant Morrison run, where he got I forget, but he got broken down like molecularly, and they spent like years going to the ocean gathering up all the pieces until finally he could, pull his consciousness back together again, and he was like a PTSD freak, or you know what I mean? I don't know. I just look like they always say, oh, he's the most powerful superhero, but I'm like, you just light him on fire, plastic burns. You know what I mean? Just in his history.
I can remember watching Super Friends. Plastic Man was on there once, and in order to in order to make sure he didn't get seen because he was flying through the air, and another plane was coming by, was he stretched himself so thin that he was as thin as like a thread, so no one could see him.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. He doesn't have internal organs, like he's just sentient plastic, which is why he can't have children. It drives me nuts. Because if he has the organs to produce children, then he can't do what he does. Got to be logical about your comic book, guys.
Omnipo, yes, most of my characters have been drawn. You can probably see them, most of the characters, on the Indiegogo site, which I have linked in the description. Other than that, I haven't posted it for a while on my Twitter, but if you go over to my Twitter, which again I think should be in the description, it's RJ of the Island. You can see a lot of my stuff there for character designs and things like that. If you go back in time and look over some of the stuff. Let's see. I don't know. I never have any clue how close I am to the bottom of the chat. Alessandro says, RJ, I know that cultures are different, but can there be an element of human brotherhood? Oh yeah. Alessandro, I love the first line of, what is it? It's book 14 of Augustine of Hippo's City of God, when he talks about the fact that all mankind is made up of men that are of one human brotherhood, because of course he's going from the biblical text and then coming forward in the City of God, saying that God made us this way in order for us to all be from one single source, which is Adam and Eve, so that we can have a brotherhood, so that we can communicate with each other in a brotherly way. That was his entire way of saying that, there's so many vast differences in cultures and everything else, but there is that key element of you can always communicate with everyone else who is human because you are brothers at heart.
I've always said that humanity was at least 51% good, because if we weren't 51% good, we never would have got past caveman times. You know what I mean? It's that 1% that is we always talk about the bad 1%, but there's the one good percent that, that gets us to the point where, like, in the 30s, everybody was dying of dysentery. Well, that's not really happening that much anymore. Even the homeless people are fat. So, we have to be mathematically 51% good.
Cushion says, RJ, John, what's a good comic series set in American Western frontier? I have Manifest Destiny and East of West on my list already, but would like to know if you know of others. Very off the top of my head, I say go read Jonah Hex.
Yeah. Jonah Hex is, without it, and any version, that's like a character that, for some reason, it brings out the best. I mean, the modern one with Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray is probably the most digestible. It's really good. But the Michael Fleischer ones from the 70s, I avoided them as a kid, because to me, if you liked Westerns, it was the best way to enjoy a Western was to watch it on TV. I liked Westerns, but why read a comic book? You could, they move, they act, they got everything you need in a TV show. But man, now I'm going back and reading these. These are excellent. These are perhaps the best comics that DC, not perhaps, these are the best comics that DC was putting out at the time. And I will say this, I hate to burst your bubble, but East to West is a slog. That's Jonathan Hickman. As always, Jonathan Hickman is all concept, poor delivery. Manifest Destiny I have, but I'm missing, like, I have like every 3 issues, and I once I fill in the gaps, I'll read it. So I haven't read it yet. But if you want a good Western, like RJ said, can't beat Jonah Hex.
Look, I never realized this before. We're talking Jonah Hex 90 here, and it's Mark Texera doing the art.
Oh, wow.
For the cover at the very least. He's not doing the internal, but I mean, this is before I think he was working on the X-Men. It is, this is the book par excellence that I think Jonah Hex is, that connects sequential art in its modern form with illustrations of old stuff like Buck Rogers and what oh, I can't remember what the heck is the name of the other one off the top of my head. But a lot of the old stuff was illustrations, not sequential art, and it was illustration after illustration. Jonah Hex, it looks like old style illustrations, while at the same time has the flow of sequential art to it.
Well, the artist, the internal artist I saw was Gray Morrow. You cannot get a better comic book artist than Gray Morrow. Oh my God, he's so good. Check it out.
Jewel is here and he's saying people should stop saying Caucasian, say European. Caucasian is a psyop like Native American. Yeah, labels are a thing, Jewel. I agree. There's a lot of labels that I don't like to use either. That's funny because again, John and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. You go back 150 years and you know, Italians and Irish weren't considered Caucasian. So, you know,
yep.
you got something there.
Right. That's where the Beyond the Pale came from, right? Once you went past, you know, Northern Ireland, you were beyond the pale. You know, and that was bad, being beyond the pale.
Ryan says, RJ John, I believe a true hero has to believe in a virtuous higher power that wants the good of mankind and therefore intervenes in assisting heroic efforts against impossible odds. I would say, honestly, I was again thinking about this today. There's this thing in philosophy where how can you prove that a person acts altruistically? Because, you know, if they're working for, they say, I serve a higher power and I'm doing it because I serve a higher power. Are they being altruistic or not? And that's one of the really interesting questions that I think you can tug on and makes really good stories, Ryan, right there. Try to figure out whether or not this person's being altruistic, being heroic in that kind of way.
That is an interesting question.
Alessandro says, RJ, what do you think about the media literacy of progressives? Oh, it's in the garbage. One of my first videos, Alessandro, like literally at the first of my channel, was to go over a video that they posted on the Marvel main site, and it was their Twitter site as well, about how to read sequential art. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, yes, I understand you want to draw in new readers, and you're drawing in people who probably are used to manga, so they don't read it the exact same way. You know, they had to say you have to read from, you know, left to right, not right to left, and all this kind of thing. But I'm saying to myself, if you don't know how to read sequential art, then trying to sell them comics is not the first step you should do, quite honestly. And that's, these people don't have media literacy in any way, and it's falling, if anything, because of the fact that they're siloed in their own way of looking at things and they only watch their own channels. This is why, Alessandro, by the way, when I went over those Marvel podcasts in the first couple of years of my channel, I was able to do so because these people had zero clue that anyone from the other side would ever listen to anything that they had to say. And they wouldn't think of it. They wouldn't think of it because they themselves wouldn't go to the other side and look. And that's why they only think of their own side, whereas people on the conservative side will watch things that progressives put out, like me. I've done that, and they will listen to their own side and the other side at the same time. So our literacy is much higher than theirs.
It's like Sauron. Sauron couldn't conceive that anybody would destroy the ring. You know, like that's the progressives. They can't conceive that anybody would outside the bubble would watch inside the bubble because they would never look outside the bubble. You know, they can't see beyond their own limitations.
Let's see. I'm just scrolling through the comments, see if there's anything for me. If you can tag me or John or put a question mark. Flash Gordon, thank you very much. That's what I was thinking of, Michael.
Somebody mentioned Blueberry. That is a great Western. Mobius, or his real name, Jean Garrard. Blueberry, Lieutenant Blueberry is a great Western. Oh, there it is. You just brought it up as I was saying it. Blueberry's a great Western. Vaz.
I always say, quite honestly, if you want some good Westerns, you want to go see some good European Westerns, quite honestly, French is not that hard to decipher. Just go buy some of those French bande dessinée books. They do a lot of Western stuff.
Tex Ritter. It's an Italian Western. The Italians still love Westerns, and they're being translated into English. I got a big one right here. what is the name of this company? I can't think of the name of the company, and if I move the stack of comics, it's gonna fall. But look up Tex Ritter. You could get hardcovers. They're excellent comics.
Southern Sky, I completely agree. He says hyphenated Americanism is a trap to dilute the founding of America by white Europeans. I agree. You're an American or you're not American.
I remember my buddy who is Irish American. He's big into being Irish American, and he went to Ireland finally. And people were like, "Oh, what?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm Irish American." And he said the Irish in the bar were just like, "Well, what are you? Are you Irish or are you American?" He's like, "I'm Irish American." He goes, and they all shook their heads. He said, "Typical American, think you can have everything." He goes, "You're American." He goes, "You grew up eating McDonald's. You grew up watching Sesame Street and Scooby Doo." He goes, "But you're asking us for directions. If you were Irish, you would know your way around. You don't talk like us. You don't think like us." He goes, "You're not Irish." He goes, "Maybe your mother was born in Ireland." He goes, "But you're American." And when he came back, he told me that he was angry. I said, "They're absolutely right." You know, I say I'm Irish Italian, but it's understood I'm American. You put me, I don't speak Italian. I don't speak Gaelic. If you teleported me to Europe, I would be lost. I'd be confused. You know, you dance with the one that brought you. I'm American, but my heritage, my ancestry is European. But you know, I have no affinity for Italy as far as like that's my people. They're not my people. You know.
I remember, John, quite honestly, I was in it's like probably first years of no, it might not have been, but I was in university, and one of my friends bought a big, it was a mini series that had come on some documentary channel. And it was like um, 5, 6 tapes long. It was all about the Celts, and it goes through Ireland and all that kind of stuff. And he said, "Watch this." And so I watched it, and I literally said to myself, because I always thought to myself, you know, because Scottish, right? I go through the Scottish and Irish heritage. And when I actually saw a lot of the stuff that they did and still do in Ireland and Scotland, I was like, yeah, I'm really glad I don't live there. I mean, I can have some idea about my heritage and even know some Gaelic and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I don't want to live there. I'm sorry. That's not who I am. It's just a lot of the weird things, weird, almost superstitious things, just because they've been there for so long.
Look at that Johnny Thunder. That's the Roy Thomas female Johnny Thunder, huh?
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah,
Johnny Thunder.
Short-lived. Look at that
Number
Barry
2.
Smith Cole.
I love this cold cover.
Yeah, that is so
you got
good.
your Barry Windsor Smith.
I just wish this website, like you could click on it, make it bigger.
Yeah, that's the one thing about the covers. You can only get low resolution, basically.
I remember Barry Windsor Smith was one of those artists that, to me, he was an occasion. Like what was it? What was the issue of the X-Men with Storm was on the cover? She's like punk rock Storm, and Barry Windsor Smith draws it. I want to say 196, but I might be wrong. But I remember my friend, the same one who went to Ireland, he was like, "Wow, I missed the Barry Windsor Smith because this is going to be a fortune to buy." Like, it was important, you know?
I don't remember off the top of my head, unless you're thinking of the Asgardian one where she uses Thor's hammer, because that was Barry Windsor Smith.
Oh, was it?
Well, it was half Barry Windsor Smith and half Paul Smith, because it was a double issue of annuals.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Paul Smith was such. I loved his simple, clean art. It was so good, right? That's one of your favorites. Is that?
Oh yeah, I love Paul Smith. I think he's an underrated artist, and he was doing comics for far too short a period. Mainstream comics, anyways.
I'm trying to look at that Legion of Superheroes. That's when the Legion was still so good.
That was your Baxter paper printed Legion of Superheroes #9. You could only get in the comic shops.
Yeah. Micronauts, that was so good. Micronauts was so much better than it. This was the second series. This was Peter Gillis, I think, was the writer. I love that Teen Titans. This was they meet the gods of the actual Titans of myth.
That was also Baxter Paper, and so is the Omega Man that's over there on the other side. A lot of these were DC's premier stuff that you could only get at comic shops. But I think they did publish it for the Teen Titans. That's one of the things. If you don't know, if you weren't there, they did publish a lot of things in Baxter Paper, which is a superior grade paper at the comic shops only, and then do a reprint basically of it with a different cover on the newsstand.
So many good. Nexus is really good. Tomorrow I'm gonna have Mike Barron on my channel, and he's gonna be talking about his Nexus omnibus. Guys, Nexus is the most unique superhero comic you'll ever read. Did you ever read Nexus?
I love this Spider-Man. I haven't read a lot of Nexus, but I love this cover.
Yeah, that's John Byrne, right? The
Yep.
cover? Yeah.
The whole thing, there's a lot of covers like this. Frank Miller did one too for Daredevil with Daredevil and Black Widow, where they play with shadow and negative spaces. I love it when they do that.
Yeah, this was a good cover. I remember seeing that on the comic book store shelf. It just stood out.
There's a lot of Conan, Savage Sword, Sergeant Rock, Rom. Beautiful stuff here.
I love Gru. Wow, two issues of Gru came out that month, huh?
There we go, right there. There's the Barry Windsor Smith. Oh, this is the UK version of it. That's what it is.
Yeah. I love seeing the UK covers because it's new to me, even though it's 20 years old, because I've never seen them before.
Well, here you got this is Spanish. Is this the Spanish version? Or is this UK version? No, it's Marvel UK of New Mutants with Spider-Man as well. I can't remember what they're reprinting though, off the top of my head. Cannonball. It must be a Marvel 2-in-1.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, you got this is the same year. What is this? 1985. Is that the same year the Return of the Jedi came out? Why are they still reprinting Conan the Barbarian stuff? Just put him on the
Michael Petrowski, however you pronounce it. Did they ever do a civilized sword of Conan? Yes. He sat down and he was doing his taxes. He hired the accountants from Samaria.
It's called Conan the King. Here we go. There's your John Romita Jr. stuff right here. This is the John Romita stuff that I love for X-Men. I mean, a lot of people don't like his stuff on X-Men. I love it. It was great, if you ask me. I always say it's not as clean as John Byrne, but it's just as stylish.
Yeah, it was very scratchy. I remember that was Dan Green. Inker Dan Green.
Well, again, this led right into Mark Texeira and all that kind of stuff. Texeira, I never remember how to say his name, but the way that he put his lines down almost as pencil lines, I think again, you got yourself a flow of art with these X-Men books, going all the way from John Byrne into the age of John Romita Jr. and then into Mark Texeira and the rest of them, which was the height of storytelling done by Chris Claremont.
Somebody said that people hated Rom. Man, Rom was well received. Rom was a great comic. It had no business being as good as it was based on a toy. What was it? Parker Brothers. Parker Brothers, a board game company, made a stupid toy. It really was a bad toy. But man, did that comic it was so good. And so much stuff came out of it that's like part of the Marvel Universe that we don't think of.
What does George say? I think the first 12 issues of Conan the King from Marvel was drawn by Mark Silvestri. Yeah, Mark Silvestri. Yeah, as well, Mark Silvestri. I loved, I guess, the Mark Silvestri stuff on X-Men as well, but what was it? Mark Texeira was focusing mainly on Ghost Rider at that time, right? Well, he did the first, what is it? Danny, what's his last name?
Kitch.
Yeah, but again, I put up a lot of that stuff on my Twitter every once in a while. It's like I did Beautiful Women, basically, and I started doing some of them from Mark Texeira, and a lot of people were like, how is that beautiful? And I'm thinking to myself, oh, come on. Are you serious? His art style is one that I don't know. It is one that you really have to get into because of the way that he writes his lines, and it's almost like there's no inking in it at all. Sometimes it's almost as if the whole thing is pencils. And then here you got the beautiful art of Walter Simonson.
Yeah, I love that cover.
This is the beginning of the story, which I always call the greatest story arc in all of comics, because what you have here is Hel. She is maiming Thor, and that's why he has to go put him under a curse as well, and then maims him, and that's why he has to go and find armor in order to actually keep on fighting, because his bones become as frail as an Asgardian woman. I got to ask this question, John. Did you watch V when it originally came out?
No, I didn't. I didn't watch it. But the funny story is, what year is this? What year did
1985.
85. So I was in I think I just started high school. But I remember my mother and my aunt were watching it. And I was in my bedroom probably watching something else. And in the first episode, didn't like the woman, like she had like a serpent tongue or something like that. That was like the big reveal. I remember my aunt screaming and running out of the living room. And she's like, that show is crazy. Don't watch it. My aunt was such a crybaby.
I can remember the same thing because I was younger than you. My two older brothers were watching it, and I was just sitting there watching it. And when I think it was probably I should go watch it because I bought the whole thing on DVD last year. But it's like one of the either the first episode or one of the first episodes where they don't know that they just know that they're aliens. They don't know that they're serpent aliens, and
Right.
he picks up a rat from out of a garbage can and then eats it while he's in the alley, and they've showed the whole thing supposedly on screen. And yeah, my brother's like, hey, watch this, and I was younger than I should have been, because yeah, I was kind of freaked out by it too. Oh, I love this Web of Spider-Man as well.
Did you ever watch Trilogy of Fear as a kid? It was I don't know what it was, but it was like there was 3 horror stories in one, and one of them was Karen Black, and she had like this little Zuni doll, and they're like, don't take the chain off the doll, and she takes the chain off and it comes to life and it chases her around the apartment. Oh my god, I'll never forget. I jumped and almost hit the ceiling across the couch, across my entire. We were all sitting on the couch watching this. I jumped one end of the couch to the other end of the couch, screaming. And now when I watch it, I'm like, how did this scare me? It's like, the stupidest looking thing.
Pedro asks, have I ever watched a manga based on a video game? Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess. Everything is beautiful. The art style, the story, and the message. No, but I did read a manga that was based on a video game, because they actually did a manga of the Ultima series, which I don't think ever finished. Which, I love the Ultima series, which was a video. Well, it was a PC game. So, and they did manga of that. But yeah, I love this Web of Spider-Man. This whole run of Web of Spider-Man is just amazing.
Is that Sal Buscema?
No.
It's
Gregory the Rock.
Oh, okay. And inker Jim Mooney. Wow.
Oh yes, and the Vigilante.
Yep.
We were talking about Vigilante just a couple of episodes ago, weren't we, John? This is if anybody, well, I suppose everybody knows him now because of the television shows and things like that, but Vigilante had disappeared for like 25 years. He was DC's version of the Punisher.
Yeah, but he didn't kill. They didn't stick the landing on it. Do you remember in the first issue he challenged the mob boss to like a tennis match or something? It's like, dude, what are you doing? I want to see you shoot him in the face. He's a vigilante. He's not the tennis pro.
Which is weird because if I remember correctly, issue number 1 has him just on the cover. You see his face in a ski mask and has the gun next to his face, right in his hand, which makes you think of Dirty Harry.
Yeah. Great costume design. Adrian Chase, a judge by day, vigilante at night. But DC just didn't want to pull the trigger, metaphorically, and have him actually kill people. DC was still a little bit too goody-goody for a Punisher type character. And to tell you the truth, I'm kind of amazed that they let Punisher like pile bodies all over the place. Like even Wolverine, except for that was that Sal Buscema cover where there's the pile of bodies. Like, I don't know. I really have a hard time thinking of when Wolverine was actually killing people, except for that John Byrne issue with the Hellfire Club. He was killing those people. That was the whole point of that issue. And then they retconned it that they weren't killed. But, I always found it funny that a guy like Wolverine, whose powers is basically stab man, never really gets to stab anybody.
If I remember correctly, I think we went through, this is 1985, so this would be the second Wolverine series that came out. There it is right there, Kitty Pryde and Wolverine.
Yep. I always loved that Oni character with that mask.
This is, I think, the majority of where he gets connected to the whole Eastern mythology is in this miniseries.
Yeah, Wolverine went from like crazy berserker guy to wise sensei, Wolverine he's been around so long, he had so many iterations.
Well, we got to the end, John, and I've been talking for an hour and 10 minutes, hour and 20 minutes almost. So I think we'll just leave it there because my voice is starting to go. But if anybody else has anything in the comments, I apologize for not getting to your comment. I tried to get through everything I could, and I'm profusely grateful for everybody that's showing up today, especially my last couple of streams. They've been pretty much off the cuff, but you people don't seem to mind in the chat, which thank you very much.
Yeah, I RJ and I've been talking before we go live. Just, I'm kind of just enjoying just you and I hanging out talking about comics. Nothing against the guests. I love all the guests, but it's stressful to look for a guest, and then sometimes, a guest just shows up. I don't know anything about them, and and then it's just shill for that guest. You know what I mean? This is just hanging out talking about comics. I really do enjoy this.
And it's easy to recycle my thumbnail for these as well, because it is what you should be reading. What you should be reading is these old comics. And I'm glad that people were asking questions in the comments about, good comics to read, good Westerns to read, good things. Yeah. Go back. John and I agree. I think in the 1980s were where you get the pinnacle of a lot of good comic stories.
Yeah, I make no bones about it. The Bronze Age is where it's at for me. Yeah, I'm an old fart, I guess.
All right, I'll leave it there. And just everybody remember that I think I placed John's link in the description for his campaign that's open right now, if I remember correctly. And the descriptions for, the links for mine are there as well. Although the Crumb Destroyer is not working right now, you can go to the Valiant Heroes page and buy the books there. So I want to thank everybody for showing up. Thank you very much, John. And I'm going to go back and listen to the entire video of John talking to John Romita Jr. Everybody else should do that as well.
Yeah, and tomorrow I have Mike Barron on at 7 p.m. So let's talk to Mike tomorrow. So thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.
I want to plug your channel one more time, John. If
sure.
Anybody is new here and doesn't know John has had on some of the biggest names in comics throughout his channel. He's talked to John Romita Jr. He's talked to Mike Barron multiple times. He's had Walter Simonson on, Jim Shooter. Who else? You got Mike Miller on.
Yeah, Mark Miller.
You got some heavy hitters on there,
Tom DeFalco. And then all the guys in the indie space. I enjoy talking. I enjoy talking to everybody. And then I try to find some like obscure pros. Like she's not obscure to me, but Kat Ironwood is one of my first talks. I love that. To me, she's one of the most important women in comics that nobody remembers today. She was actually like teary-eyed when I called her up, and she's like, "You remember me?" I was like, "Of course." She pretty much founded the independent comic book movement. Such an important woman. But things like that, I enjoy talking to people. I'm trying to no avail, but I'm trying to get the Hernandez brothers on. I think that would be just a great talk. Trying to get Dan Panosian, working on Garth Ennis. I just keep pestering them. People ask me, how do you get all these people? I don't have any inside information. I don't have any connections. I just keep keep pestering them. But the secret is, once you get like a Jim Shooter or a Mark Millar on your channel, all you got to do is be like, I had Mark Millar on, and people are like, okay, I'll come on your channel. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. So that's the secret, is just be persistent, and dare say I toot my own horn and be likable. You know what I mean?
I agree.
I've had people on my channel, I'm talking about RJ, who just are dull and boring, Oh, get John Byrne. I message John Byrne every couple of months, and I just picture my message going into like an envelope just goes like this into a fire. But you don't get what you don't ask for. I would love to get John Byrne. I would love to get John Byrne. Yeah.
All right, we'll leave it on that. And like I said, if anybody here is new and loves comics and doesn't know John's channel, go over to John's Longbox and subscribe to John, because he has some beautiful, beautiful books that he covers over there and some wonderful guests. So I love John's channel. So shout out to John. Thank you very much, everybody, for showing up, and we'll see y'all later.
Back my book, Fund My Comics Heroic Tales 2. I got to fund all the comics that I'm working on right now. So thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.
All right, we're just going to end it. Bye.